Welcome back to another episode of Biz Buds with myself, Tom Ross, and my biz bud,
Michael Janda. Super excited to be here for episode 4. Biz Buds.
You're listening to Biz Buds. Super authentic, actionable advice.
We're going to open the kimono and show you what's inside.
I'm scared to see inside Mike's kimono.
Hey, it's Mike and Tom with Biz Buds.
If you like geeking out over business, marketing, and entrepreneurship, this is the podcast for you. Flying by already.
It is flying by.
We're practically on season 2. Look at us.
It's crazy. How many episodes should we have in a season? What's a season?
I'll be honest, I've never done seasonal podcasts. Yeah. So in the ones I've done, it's like season 1 still and episode 224 or something. Okay, so
we should talk about that at some point and decide what we're going to do.
I'm always quite jealous of the people that do seasons because between seasons, they actually get some rest.
Yeah,
it's like they don't have to keep cranking.
I do like the season idea. Maybe we do something once a season per quarter or something like that.
That would be fun.
Anyway,
well, it's good to see you, man. We were saying right before we hit record, neither of us is like maximum energy today.
Yes, we are struggling on this Monday morning in December, which is always a trying time in life. Everybody's busy. Everybody has a lot going on. Everybody is eating inappropriately. And so it's not best for health and energy.
It's not. It's gluttony. So you're coming out the other side of being sick. Yeah. I am far more self-imposed than that. I'm pretty sure I'm still hungover from 2 days ago for our Christmas work party. But we're going to bring the fire today.
We are going to bring the fire. It's always good. Today we're going to be talking about standing out and differentiation. And this is something that you and I are both passionate about.
We are. We try and enforce it with our fashion sense mainly.
Yes.
A bit of flair.
Exactly. My black t-shirt design.
I was going to say me and my boring navy jumper.
No, it's so important in business though. You know, when we're in business, if all things are equal, your chance of landing the client is at best 50-50. And differentiating yourself, which we'll talk about today and how to do that, can dramatically improve your close rate in business and the success of your business. So we're going to give you some actionable strategies on how to do that and share some of our mindset relating to differentiating your business from your competitors.
I would say this is actually one of my biggest pillars in business. I love it. I believe in it so much. And so I really want to hammer home like the importance of it, the impact of when you get it right today, because this is not like some fluffy thing where it's like, oh, I'll just be weird and like different for the sake of it. Like you can get very strategic about it. It has very tangible business benefits, as you alluded to. And I think just to kick us off, like so few people do this. Like I get so bored by how generic everyone is. Yeah. I don't mean that in a horrible way, but whenever someone does something a bit different, I take notice. Yeah. Because it's so unusual. I'm like, good for them. Fantastic. I'm like, finally, I haven't seen this a million times before.
Yes.
It immediately stands out to me. Yeah. To the point I just want to like high five that person. Yes. One of my coaching group recently, she showed me something and I went, wow, I haven't seen something like that. Like, that's incredible. Good for you. Immediately, like my energy just rose up. I wanted to support her. I could see so much more potential for this thing. And so many people, I don't know if you get this, but we both get a lot of DMs every single day. Yeah. And generally with me, it's like, watercolor artists, hand letterers, a lot of creatives like that. And they'll be like, why am I not growing? Why am I not making sales? Why am I not getting traction? Yeah. And then I look at their page and I always think 2 things. Number 1, they actually are very talented. And number 2, they're unbelievably generic. Yeah. They're doing what everyone else is doing. And I think, well, why would someone, gravitate to your page? Why would someone buy from you when it's the same stuff they see everywhere else? There's nothing special in it, despite them actually being very talented.
Yeah. I love, and you started to go down this route, but I love the mindset of creating a value proposition based on two separate questions. And when we're in a sales environment, we're trying to sell our business, our product, or whatever it might be, we have two questions that we have to answer in the mind of the customer. And question number one is, why should they buy this thing at all? Why should they buy this widget that I have at all? Why do they need this? We have to convince them of that. And then question number two is, why should they buy this widget from me? Mm-hmm. That's the second question. And a lot of people go into a sales meeting, a sales environment, and they think they're trying to sell why they should buy this widget at all.
Yeah.
But they're not thinking, after I sell them on the need for this widget, why should they buy it from me rather than the other 1,000 people out there that are selling the same widget? And that's what I think, is at the heart of differentiation, in this mindset that we have to create a formal structure around that question number two on why somebody should buy it specifically from us.
Yeah, I love that. And you're right in terms of how many people are selling the widgets. There's never been more competition. There's never been a lower barrier to entry. We had it, I think, in our second year of my business, Design Cuts. There was one competitor a week starting up.
Wow.
And you feel that, like in a pretty small niche.
Yeah.
And so it's a real thing. And so you can only actually survive by standing out and by being different.
Yeah. Well, and that's something niched already. You're already a niche business.
Oh yeah.
Imagine all of the designers listening to this, which we have a lot of designers who listen to our content. You're competing against millions, and it's not one new competitor per week. It's one new competitor emerging every 5 minutes in the world to try and go after the exact same work that you're going after. And so differentiating yourself is so critical. Sorry, Tom, you were going to say something else there.
Yeah. So I love when you broke it into those two parts. That's a question I quite often pose to people. And I say, why should people buy from you instead of others from your competition? And the majority of the time, people actually don't have a clear answer to that.
Yeah.
And I appreciate it. It's inherently quite a difficult question to answer, but it's the most important question. Because if you don't have an answer for it, your customers won't, or your potential customers won't. And so I think people really, really need to kind of drill down on that. And hopefully today we can get into stuff like USPs and so on.
Yeah.
But maybe we could do a quick exercise.
Yeah.
Right? So we both put out personal content. And if I were to put that question to you, why should I follow you and why should I consume your content when it seems like more people than ever are putting out business advice for creatives and carousels and all the stuff that you do? Why should I follow you, like Janda?
Two reasons, and these are intentional from the start. Reason number one is that the content that I'm sharing is not generic, pulled from books. It's pulled from my own personal life experience. And a lot of the content that I share is only to be found in my Instagram. It's something that I didn't learn from somewhere else. I invented these concepts while I was in the trenches of building my business. So completely proprietary, unique content is number one. And number two reason that I try and differentiate is I'm on a mission to be the most accessible business mentor for designers in all the world. And when I say accessible, I mean, when people DM me, I reply to every single DM. There hasn't been one that I haven't replied to, except for one when Instagram changed their UX a little bit and put the decline button where the approve button used to be. It lasted for like 4 days or something. And I accidentally, because of the speed of going through my messages, I accidentally deleted a couple messages and I could never get them back. I tried to find the people.
I bet that haunted you because I had a similar thing. I went through hundreds to try and find them.
Oh, you did? Oh, boy.
Yeah,
it haunted me because I didn't want even one person out there to feel like I felt like I was too good to reply to them. Mm-hmm. And so that's a big differentiator between how I try and position myself compared to other people that are doing a similar thing to me. I try to be this accessible mentor. So those are two ways that I try and differentiate. And then my brand color, yellow. I mean, I've had people message me saying that they were in a store and they saw yellow and black and they thought of me. But it was like Caterpillar, you know, the mega brand that has yellow and black, or Stanley Tools has yellow and black. But in the eyes of my audience, that is a color palette that I own. So there's a couple of ways of differentiating. We can talk about this. I'm going to give a structure in our conversation today on some of the criteria you should look at when differentiating. But that's the answer to mine. Now, why should somebody follow you in the content that you're sharing? What makes Tom Ross different?
So ironically, it's not that different from yours, but I feel like that's why we're aligned on this podcast, right? Yeah. So equally, I produce original content too. I got frustrated by how much was being regurgitated from books.
Yeah.
And I thought, I've actually lived this. I have built, relatively large business, hired 100 staff and so on, and grown this into something that's impacted millions of people.
Yeah.
And same with your business. And so both from my personal brand and what we're collectively doing with this podcast, I think that's quite a rare thing to have that much credibility.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of people who are trying to be teachers before they've accomplished things.
Yeah.
And, I never want to hate on anyone, but I think that is often dangerous ground. And it's something I did a little bit of when I was younger. And I kind of learned the hard way pretty quickly. It emerged like, I clearly don't know what I'm talking about yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I love that we've both been there and done that, and that we don't hold back anything. We're not trying to have, a premium course behind it where we only hold the good stuff back there.
Yeah.
We're both putting it all out there for free. We're literally sharing and helping as much as we physically can.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. Again, just being approachable. And I think certainly when you go up the scale of credibility, some of the more credible people, and there's not many of them, become a bit unreachable. Whereas I think both of us are very good at getting back to people and really caring and going deep with those relationships.
Yeah.
And then there's kind of peripheral things for me around that. So it's like, I don't take myself that seriously. I know a lot of my contemporaries and CEOs of our competitors, they're, maybe not as approachable. They're a little bit serious and out of reach. And I'm there, like, publicly owning up to my disgraceful hangovers and acting like an idiot and doing goofy videos because that's my character. So it's like, and again, I feel you're a bit similar with that as well. We don't take ourselves that seriously.
No.
And we like to have fun with it. And, there's hundreds of other little micro ways that we differentiate, and they are generally all intentional. But I think the fundamental thing is, if you are completely and utterly yourself, you naturally differentiate, because we are all unique. And therefore, by being fully yourself, you by definition, like, no one else is you. So by being Mike Janda, you are different.
I love that. The differentiating. So there are two schools of thought. Number one is do in-depth research of all your competitors and know exactly how they position themselves so that you can position yourself differently.
I love that. Oh,
but the other school of thought is what you just shared. Don't do any research at all of your competitors and just be completely authentically you, and you will naturally differentiate because you are different than everybody else in all the world. And so
option C, do both, because then you can intentionally be yourself, knowing what's going to be particularly effective within that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like, if your friends know you inside and out, they might tell you certain characteristics that you have. And by making you more self-aware of them, you can use them like a tool belt instead of just bumbling through life and kind of hoping it works out.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So, for example, like something I didn't mention when you asked me that question was the kind of authenticity that I try and bring. So I think your stuff is perhaps more tactical, And it's incredible. I mean, you offer literally the best advice around building an agency. And I look at the stuff and I'm like, you are definitely just more experienced with me with this side of things and pricing and clients and so on. But I like to think what I do better than anyone is the heart on sleeve thing of like, I will be unbelievably vulnerable to a degree that scares most people to share that much honesty. Hence my brand is the honest entrepreneur. Like that's my differentiator.
It's good. And you do great at that, and looking at the content you produce, it does have that authentic story behind it. It does have the heart on sleeve component for sure. So you do a great job on that.
But it's not an accident, right? You know what I mean? So you tune into like, okay, well, I'm unique, you're unique. We've both got thousands of aspects of our personalities that make us unique, but which ones are we going to pull on? Because we know they're going to help us dominate the market we're trying to reach.
Okay, so why don't we talk some tangibles? Let's talk about what if and let me share a little story. I ran my agency for 13 years, and in that 13 years, we went through probably about 3 different positioning overhauls where the business had grown. We had to kind of find our new footing at a bigger size business, going after bigger size engagements. And, it was different. You have to evolve and adapt as a business. And you start competing against new businesses as you grow. So those of you listening out here and you're a solo freelancer, you're competing against other solo freelancers all over the world. But when you grow your business to where you have 5, 6 employees, now you're competing in a different sector. And when you have 15, 20 employees, you're competing in a different sector. And you have a completely new opportunity to reposition yourself against a new competitive landscape. So one of the times that we did this in my agency was back in, I think, 2013. And it was, how are we going to differentiate ourselves? And I created a spreadsheet that had all of the agencies that we could find that were similar to us, meaning they were competing for the same type of work, for the same type of clients, doing the same type of services as we were. And we created this spreadsheet. And then I created a list of criteria that we were going to examine on their businesses so that we could go and we could figure out, how do we position ourselves in the market strategically competitive to these people. So let me just give you a couple of the criteria that I put in the columns of this spreadsheet. So in the rows, we had the agencies listed, and in the columns, we had the criteria that we were doing our competitive analysis with. So number 1 was brand color. What color is their brand versus our brand? So just from a visual marketing standpoint, that's something important. We're designers, and so that's something we always look at. Okay, differentiating. Well, I'm yellow and black. It was one of the first things I mentioned when we were talking about that.
So I knew you'd find a way to get Team Yellow in there.
Yeah, we had to get Team Yellow in there. So brand color or marketing, typography, color, style, all those things could be one of the elements. The services offered. What are the services that they offer versus the services that we offer? What about the price point of those services? Are they higher, lower, same as us? And it doesn't need to be specific price point, here's what they charge for this and here's what we charge for this. It can be we're competing in the same numeric range as these ones, or we're cheaper, same, or more expensive than these people. What channels do they market their business in? Are they going all in on, relationship marketing like what I did in my agency? Are they marketing in certain channels? Do they do award-based marketing where they win awards and generate notoriety that way? What are the marketing channels? Social media, of course, in that. I went so far as to track how many followers did they have in all the social channels, from Facebook, Twitter, etc. How many followers did they have? So you can go really in depth on this. And then taglines and positioning was the next big one. We went through their copy. that was on their website, and we tried to extract what is their tagline. If they didn't clearly articulate it, we try and extract one out of their about copy or something, so that we knew how were they positioning themselves in the marketplace. And that was the competitive research that we did of all of these people that were competing for the same type of work as us. And it is eye-opening for you, because then you get all the data that you need, and you can sit back and say, why should somebody buy from me instead of these people? And now I can actually try and answer that question, because I know why they should buy from those people.
Yeah. And people can sense if you don't have a confident answer to that, because, and let me know your thoughts on this, Mike. I know it might sound like a big ask, but my old business approach growing up, it used to be that I would look at a huge business earning a ton of money, and I would think, well, if I did 10% as good a job as them, I'd earn 10% of the money. This is when I was very young and like less business savvy. So I'd be like, oh, wow, they're earning 10 million a year. So I just need to do 10% of what they're doing, and I'm going to earn $1 million a year. Yeah. And it's like, of course not, because why would someone want something that was 10% as good? Yeah. Or aka 90% it's more cruddy.
Flawed thinking for sure.
It is. And that sucked. And so, you know, what you're doing is you're rendering yourself not the first best or second best or third best, but probably like 14th best. And no one wants 14th best. And so the lesson coming out the other side of that was, okay, I need to find a way to always be number one, because I knew that whether it was a customer or a client or a business partner, if someone really kind of put me in a corner and asked me the question, why should we use you? And in the back of my head, my honest answer was, well, if you wanted the best thing for your business, you shouldn't. You should use our competitor, because they actually would be a better option for you. Then something's very wrong. And obviously you wouldn't tell that to your clients, but just knowing it, even kind of subconsciously, is really damaging, because you can't then market with full confidence. You can't really do business the way you should, because you've got that lingering feeling of like, well, we're third best. What do you think about that?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I love what you were saying about the 10%.
Oh, it's so dumb.
Yeah, it is pretty dumb. Because your goal should be to be the number one in the niche that you're trying to fill, in your position. We talk about apples to apples comparison. You know, you never want in business to be an apples to apples comparison where you and your competitor competing for the same project match in all of the decision-making criteria from the client. You don't want that apples to apples comparison. You want it to be apples to oranges. And when you're the orange, you want to be the number one orange that's competing for this work. And so how do we accomplish that in business? And let me share with you what my positioning was with my clients when I was growing my agency. So we were in a second tier market, and all of our clients were in first tier markets. Our clients were in LA, New York, DC, and San Francisco primarily. That's where 90% of our work came out of those markets. So all of the people that we competed against for this work were in those major markets. So we were kind of running the race from behind and not competing at the same level as them as far as stature of location. So that was a point of differentiation for them that was superior to us. Yeah. We couldn't do it. If I wanted to compete at that level, I had to open an office in LA to start doing that. And I didn't want that to be what I was doing in my career, in my life. I chose not to do that. I thought about it a lot of times. So where did we compete? Where did we try and position ourselves? Well, we realized that one thing that made us unique was our customer experience. We're very accommodating. We're the nice people. We're not the stuck-up black turtleneck designers that are going to go in the room and, you know, that arrogant designer ad man kind of a style. We
Yeah.
weren't going to be that. We were going to be super fun to work with, super easy to work with, super accommodating, bend over backwards to please our client kind of a position. So we were differentiating in customer experience. Another way that we differentiated was in our price point, because we could. My cost to do business was less than an agency we competed against in New York City.
Because you weren't as flashy, you didn't have the locational
It
expenses and
cost
so
me
on.
way less. Yeah, I mean, my payment for my office space was a fraction of what it would have been in New York City. I mean, we're talking about 10% cost.
That's crazy. And let me guess, you could probably charge a reasonable amount less than your competitors, but actually be more profitable than them.
Exactly. That's exactly it. We ran at a 31% profit margin over 13 years. Mm-hmm. And by charging less than our competitors, but I know that many of our competitors didn't even come close to that profit margin stretched over that amount of time. Mm-hmm. And so it's differentiating in price is very effective as long as you're still profitable. And some people try and differentiate in price by being a bargain basement price
race to the bottom.
Yeah. And it's not effective to be beneficial for your business. And then you're actually hamstringing your client from getting the quality work that they need, because you're not giving enough time available for executing on the work at a high level. So anyway, so that's where we differentiated primarily.
Well, that's pretty compelling. If I'm a client right now and I'm like, you're telling me that you're going to charge me less and treat me better, it's like, okay, where do I sign?
Yeah, exactly. So it's a great way to summarize it. And then the important thing is that we were still giving the quality that they were getting from the major market agencies. I started my agency when I was living in LA. After having worked at Fox, I understood the industries we were serving, and I produced that level quality work. Yep. So we were giving apples to apples comparison on quality, apples to orange comparison on price, apples to orange comparison on customer experience. But the client had an orange to apples comparison on location. Yeah. Location, availability, accessibility. They could drive over and see the client that very day. And for us, we needed a few days to buy flights and jump on a plane and organize a trip. And so we were playing at a disadvantage in some criteria, and they were playing at a disadvantage in other criteria. So you have to leverage your advantages based on who you are as a business, knowing that you can't win in every criteria. And that's something I think important on differentiation. You cannot win in every single criteria.
It's hard to.
It's hard to.
We did, and we're not anymore.
Yeah.
So we did, because when I started my company, it was a much smaller niche than a design agency. So we were doing design bundles essentially, and these limited time deals. And there weren't hundreds of competitors. There was probably like dozens.
Yeah.
Worldwide. And so I did a very similar approach to you, where I systematically analyzed every single one of them, and I worked out how we actually could be the best by being the best in every single area. And it worked, and it put us at number one. So we had the best quality products, we had the best price, we had the best license, the best customer care, like everything made us the best. What we've done more recently is we pivoted into more of a marketplace model. And in that space, there's some ginormous competitors, people like Envato and so on.
Yeah.
And so we still, I believe very strongly, are number one in most key areas, but we're not in terms of things like product breadth, because we don't have 5 million products, and nor do we want to, because I believe the quality drops then.
Yeah.
So now, similar to your agency, I think we win on virtually every front, but there are definitely a couple where we're at a quote disadvantage, even though in my mind it's an advantage.
Yeah. Okay, so let's rephrase that and say you don't need to win in every criteria of this differentiation.
Yeah.
You shouldn't look at this competitive spreadsheet and think to yourself, I have to be better in every single category. You don't. And some clients are going, I mean, we had clients that would not choose us because we were not in LA. I was in second tier market. We would lose right out of the gate because we didn't have the mystique of being in a major market. Yeah. Even though I knew, and it was always frustrating to me as a competitive human, because I knew that I could produce as good or better quality than the people in that market, but I didn't have the swagger of a Hollywood-based agency.
But you probably wouldn't want the clients that were all about that.
Exactly. So, and I wouldn't want to do what it takes to be that person. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to sacrifice my personal caring style to try and be that swaggy style.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to be authentic to me.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at this competitive spreadsheet, the competitive research spreadsheet, listing out these criteria, you shouldn't look at it and think, I have to win in every single category. You have to look at it and say, what categories can I reasonably win in? And is it enough to make the client choose me over the competitors? That's all you need. You're looking for this advantage in the sales cycle based on your differentiation, based on answering that question, why should they buy it from you? And you only have to win in enough categories for the client to say, I should buy it from Tom because he wins in the categories I care about most.
Yeah, that's super smart. And maybe it's like my personal, I don't know, foibles, but I really get competitive with this where I want to be the best in every category. Yeah. And I have to come to terms with the fact you can't always be.
Yeah.
But it's something I always want to chase because I don't like the idea of like any of our competitors ever beating us at anything.
Yeah.
So it's like, no, we have to like find a way to become the best
with it. Let's take Envato. You mentioned Envato, and a great business. And I've bought from Envato for a decade plus. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's since the beginning. And I've watched their brand evolve and things. And they have a huge market share. And the sheer volume of products that they have available is just astronomical. And every channel of, I mean, it's just so much that if you did want to compete and win in that category, you're going to have to make a significant investment into your business to mm-hmm. help get you from where you are now to that level. And this is where you have to look at this analysis and say to yourself, am I willing to make that investment to win in the category of product volume, of choices available? And if you're not, then choose intentionally to let them win in that category because you're going to position yourself to win in all of the other categories that exist.
Exactly, which we've done. So we're known for being the most curated marketplace on earth. So you go anywhere else and you have to sift through an ocean of crap to find the good stuff.
Yeah.
But we say we only work with the top 1% of creators. So we're like that red rope pass kind of thing. And people love it because they browse around and it's all amazing. Yeah. There's no bad stuff in there. Anything you buy, you know, it's going to be great and so on. So that's a great example of something where we were very intentional about that.
Yeah.
Because you're right. If we were to say, okay, we want 50 million items in our marketplace, it's like, well, that would be damn impossible without hundreds of millions of dollars and a lot of time, and it'd be very, very difficult.
Yeah.
So I guess I've been making notes as we've been talking here, and two things we've looked at in this audit of the wider market is the business aspects, and kind of alongside that, the branding aspects. That's things you mentioned, like the color scheme and so on.
Uh-huh.
And then within each of those, you're trying to assess the difficulty to offer the best in that particular aspect, right? So something like seeing what colors your competitors have and picking a color that is different and unique in your market, that's pretty low difficulty.
Yeah.
something like investing hundreds of millions of dollars to get 50 million units of stock in your marketplace, that would be extremely high difficulty.
Yeah.
And so, I feel like I want us to offer a PDF or something on the back of this episode that people can fill out. But, it can be actually a surprisingly fun exercise. I don't want this to sound super geeky and overwhelming to people. When I did this, I was actually on a mini break with my girlfriend and my family, and I printed out endless sheets of paper with like my competitors' logos and all this information. And I sat on the floor and did it.
When you say a mini break, you weren't taking a break from your girlfriend and your family. You were on a break with them at the time. Yeah. Okay, just wanted to clarify.
Nearly slipped into Ross from Friends there. We were on a break.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, it can be quite a creative exercise. Like I literally just surrounded myself with hundreds of sheets of paper. I was like frantically writing notes, doodling, drawing diagrams. It was a remarkably creative exercise. Yeah. It felt more art than science, even though it was quite strategic and systematic.
Yeah.
And it can be really fun because it's lateral thinking at its finest. You're really trying to think outside the box and be like, how am I going to find an angle here? That was it. Like some aspects were very obvious to me. Well, they suck at this, I'm going to do it better. Some I really had to think outside the box and be like, how am I going to find that perfect angle where I can dominate in this area?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I had a lot of fun doing this too, paying attention to the competitors, creating this audit, this competitive research spreadsheet. And then it's just so eye-opening to help you really start to think about your business in a strategic way, with that one question in mind is, why should they buy from Design Cuts versus Envato? Why?
And I have those conversations every day.
Yeah.
Like I can ream it off, and whenever I finish, people go, damn, that's a no-brainer. Yeah. Like, how powerful that is? If I was like, I don't really know. That would be horrendous.
So it is powerful. And it is something that becomes part of your sales meeting conversation with your clients. It becomes, you highlight your key differentiators. So you're sitting in with a client and you're scoping out a project, and they talk about the fact that they're getting other bids for the same work. Let's just talk about this as a service-based business from my agency style. They're talking about getting other bids, and you need to be able to say to them, well, while you're examining your bids, please keep in mind the fact that we are X, Y, and Z in how we position our business. Highlight your key differentiators compared to the competitors. Now, take car companies do this all the time when they don't say, hey, well, they actually do. They'll say, hey, this is, Ford truck is XYZ, has the highest capacity per whatever on the market. They tell you what makes theirs different. And usually it's one of the only couple things they say in the ad. Trucks, especially, because people buy trucks based on some of those statistics of it. Other businesses buy it based on the brand. And so they've got Matthew McConaughey sitting in a Lincoln. Do you get those ads in UK?
No, I wish we did. All right.
He's driving his Lincoln. Look him up on YouTube. He's driving his Lincoln, and he's just talking about his day, and he's talking about his stuff. And it doesn't say, my Lincoln has X horsepower or whatever. They're differentiating based on the brand, and they're trying to associate their brand with the swagger of Matthew McConaughey's brand, his personal brand. And it's all a branded delivery because they're trying to differentiate on brand.
Which I think Apple used to do more. Now it's a little bit more like, we have this many megapixels in our camera. Yeah. And that for me is dangerous ground, because it's easier for people to impose on that or beat you or come out with a newer bit of tech or whatever. When Apple's differentiator was think different, it was more of a brand play. And so I think in this whole wider chat about differentiation, it is worth making the distinction between, brand differentiation and really commoditizing almost your business, because that is more vulnerable. And actually, when you're doing this exercise of trying to stand out from your competitors in your market, realize it's a benefit if it's hard for you to do so, because that means it's hard for other people. If it's super easy and like in 2 seconds flat, you can differentiate and stand out and become the best thing, well, good for you, but it won't take 5 minutes before you're doing well in that space for someone else to figure out, this is really easy. I'm going to come along and do the same thing. If it's very difficult for you to actually like kind of weave your way in there and you know, fight to become the best, well, great. The harder it is and the more steps, the harder it's going to be for someone to follow that.
Yeah. It's a great point. Okay, so let's distill this down into, I gave a little bit of criteria on what I did in my competitive research. We can talk about some more global qualities that you can do just for any type of business that might be listening to this. You can differentiate your product. If their product comes in one color, can you differentiate by making your product come out in 5 colors? You mentioned Apple. They did this with the iMac, the release of the iMac in all the colors. All of a sudden, computers were fun again. They were fun, and they still do this with the phones. You can get the gold or the midnight green or whatever. They come out with new colors because it differentiates. And I don't follow the other phone businesses closely enough to know if they do this. I'm sure that they do, but it is a differentiator. Nobody has midnight green. That's the new Apple iPhone Pro Max color. That's the one that I actually bought because I didn't have any other choices available for me, but it is the only one. Midnight green is the only one. That's the only color
I love it.
out there. So you can differentiate your product. You can differentiate your services. You can differentiate in customer experience in that. And Tom and I both do this a lot in our business. We've talked a lot about that in this conversation, but customer experience is a way to differentiate. Chick-fil-A is one of those, you know, my pleasure. That's their key, that's their key phrase in Chick-fil-A, and that's how they differentiate. One of the ways that they differentiate from the other fast food restaurants. You can differentiate in price. Are you higher, lower, or the same in price point? And being lower is not always the differentiator you want. Sometimes pricing yourself as the premium product is the right way for you to differentiate. So when you talk about or you consider differentiating on price, don't immediately think I have to be cheaper, because Apple doesn't think that way. Apple charges higher than everybody and they differentiate on price and they still get the business that they're looking for.
Yeah, and the way it works with that is it's kind of like trying to compete to be bigger. That's going to be very tough in some markets. Same thing with being cheaper, because inherently the bigger a company, they get things like economies of scale.
Yeah,
they've been able to whittle their prices down over a long period of time, and often they even run at a loss to eliminate any competition. So Amazon's a prime example of that, right? They've literally strategically put many small to medium and even large businesses out of business by crushing them on price, and they're not even paying tax on it, which you know, to many people's chagrin. And we could never compete with Amazon on price. They've got this global infrastructure, like we just couldn't do it.
And Amazon ran at a loss for almost 20 years before they ever turned a profit in their business. They took every nickel of investment and profit and poured it into crushing the competitive landscape, which they have done in so many different industries. So price, and then the final criteria I would say is the brand value, brand reputation is the final element. And again, Apple does a great job of being a premium brand. I mentioned Lincoln Cars, premium brand. They're a luxury brand car. So that value and reputation. Why does somebody buy a Mercedes over a Ford? Well, most of the time, if all the specs are the same, or even if the Ford is winning on some of the technical specs of the automobile, they aren't ever going to win on the brand reputation of Mercedes. And that's where Mercedes wins. They win in that reputation. And so product, service, customer experience, price, and then brand reputation are all kind of these global categories that you can look at and say, where am I going to differentiate myself in these 5 different categories?
Yeah, I love it. That's a great summation of it. And I've written here, simplicity and usability, they sit underneath product and service. So with your products and services, people might have a certain emotive brand connection with it. That's obviously more on the brand side, but equally, what is it actually like to work with or use your services? What is it actually like to use your products? And if we're going with the Apple example, I don't know about you, Mike, but I have 2 primary, like I could probably give you my top 10 reasons for buying Apple products. And I do, I'm on my brand new MacBook Pro.
Yeah.
I've got my iPhone down there. Like, you know, I'm an Apple fanboy. My number 1 reason is probably brand. Historically, I buy into their brand and their ideology. My number 2, by a long way, is UI.
Yeah.
I cannot stand the what's it even called? I'm pulling a blank. The other mobile UI. That's terrible.
The Android. Yeah.
Android, thank you. All the Android users, like, you freaking idiot. You can't even remember the name. I can't personally stand the Android UI. And I know people say, oh, it takes a bit of getting used to. Same thing with Windows. It makes my head hurt. I like, as someone who loves, you know, really smooth UI, I just find it unbearable. And I find the Apple UI leagues better than, and that's my personal preference. I'm not saying it's right or wrong.
No, but Apple knows
they're 2 reasons. Like what I don't care about so much is the tech, because I see friends all the time with their Android phones. The camera's better, and I'm not one of these Apple fanboys that's just going to deny that and be like, oh no, look, mine's so great. I've seen people with like a brand new iPhone 10 proudly show me the photo they took in low light, and I'm like, it doesn't look that great. I hate to tell you, like, you know, compared to some of the stuff that's out there, but I will remain very fiercely loyal because of the 2 reasons I outlined.
Yeah. I think, so if we distilled that down into a general category for a product, you could call it accessibility or usability, something like that. It's beyond just the user interface. For me, it's the whole infrastructure of it all, that the Apple product syncs in with my Mac laptop, syncs in with my Apple TVs. If I'm watching a show on my phone and then I go to my television and turn on my Apple TV, I can just restart it where I was. You know, there's this friendliness of usability across multiple platforms that is very appealing to me. So I think that we could add that category of usability to this global list of product, service, customer experience, price, brand reputation, and usability, or infrastructure. Infrastructure might be a better way to even put it, or maybe they're 2 different categories, because infrastructure is a reason that somebody buys, because they know that they're going to get good customer service. Costco is so great about this. If you buy something from Costco and you want to return it in 6 months, you just show up with the product. You don't even need the receipt. They'll scan your card and they'll take it back. Their return policy is unbelievable. They take it back, no questions asked. And my brother-in-law has returned like a television a year and a half later, that kind of thing, or a vacuum cleaner a year and a half after using it.
Full of dust.
You return it, or Blendtec blender, you know, you just return it. And so that infrastructure, or that customer support, maybe some of that bridges a lot of these different topics, but it is a way to differentiate, and it is why people will buy from you versus somewhere else.
Massively. And I think the tough part is, how do you distill down all of those differentiating points into that nutshell, into that mission statement, that brand soundbite, because that then becomes how people remember you in your market. And that's what goes in the Instagram bio section and the headline on your website. And, you know, one of the first things out your mouth when people ask you about your business, your elevator pitch, or the rest of it.
Okay. So that is something that honestly, you and I can't answer for the listeners, but I can promise you that if you do this competitive research and you look at all your competitors across the criteria that we've outlined in this call, and you do it with the lens of this: why should the customer buy from me instead of these people? You can dig in and you can find the answer to that question. The answer to that question is your golden morsel that you will share in the elevator pitch. You'll share it as the closing statement in your sales cycle with your customer. It is the golden answer that's going to give you your differentiation, but you've got to work at it. Nobody's really going to be able to answer it for you. It's going to come with research and effort. Now, you can hire a marketing agency, and this is what they're going to do for you. They're going to go and they're going to try and position you and differentiate you appropriately from your competitors. That's going to cost you $20,000 to $500,000, $20,000 to $500,000 to do this with a marketing agency. Or you can spin up a spreadsheet right now after you're done listening to BizBuds today and say, this is my competitive research spreadsheet. And you just start listing your competitors and your criteria that you're going to examine your business versus their business. And you start searching for these points of differentiation.
And if you like working in a more tactile capacity, as I do, feel free to go a little bit CSI. Like, print it out, stick it on a notice board, pin up your competitors' logos, like get a Sharpie out and have some fun with it. It doesn't need to be an Excel spreadsheet, because I struggle with, some of that stuff myself.
Yeah, it's great. So make it a tangible thing, or just do it on a dry erase board and do it with the people of your business. Have them sit down and say, you know what, let's start working on this, because we got to understand where we're positioning ourselves compared to our competitors. Any of those models can work. Do it on a joint Notion document where you and your inner circle at your business start working on this together. But you got to work on it. It can't just be an accident.
We actually did this recently. So we did it with our whole team. We distilled down to our core values. This was kind of an exercise in company culture. But a lot of the USPs kind of came out in that. And I think a good exercise is, if you're part of a team or you run a team, try and get everyone separately on the team to articulate why you over your competitors, and watch. Because if the whole team struggle, or even half of them struggle, well, then you're not as aligned as you should be, because everyone should be saying the same thing and everyone should be super clear on this stuff.
Yeah. Very good advice. All right. Cool. Well, this has been super fun. Should we let's knock this into some of the tangible takeaways for this episode?
Let's do it. I love the alliteration. Tangible takeaways to finish.
Tangible takeaways. So I'll go down and I'll say one, and then you say one, and then we'll go down.
All right. I like this little tennis match.
Yeah. All right.
So, what player are you going to be, Mike? If you had to pick a tennis player,
I'm John McEnroe.
Oh, damn it. That was going to be my one. You cannot be serious, Mike.
You gotta pick a British, man. You gotta.
All right. I'll go with old Andy Mazda then. Okay. Contemporary one.
All right. Good. All right. So John McEnroe says that John McEnroe never said this.
I'm not going to do a Scottish accent for Andy.
Right. The first tangible takeaway in differentiating, you've got to be yourself and be authentic. This is one of the first things that we talked about.
I love it. The second thing is, you need to have a good answer to that question. Why should people use you over your competitors?
Yes, good. That I think is maybe the most important guiding question to help you down this path. The next is, do your research. Go in, pull out the spreadsheet, and look at product, service, customer experience, price, brand reputation, usability, and infrastructure as your guiding categories, just to start. Now, there can be 50 more that you look at, but that's a good,
and many underneath those core ones as well, right? There can be sub ones.
Yep. Yeah.
And have some fun with it. as we said, it could be an Excel spreadsheet. If your mind works that way, it could be a CSI notice board. It could be a whiteboard. You could turn this into a team exercise with some of your, key execs or whatever. You could order some takeout in and make an afternoon of it. You could sit like me as a young 24-year-old kid on the floor of a hotel, surrounded by sheets of paper, having fun, just doodling and printing out, and it looked like a 5-year-old's art class. There's no right or wrong way. It's like, have some fun with it.
Yeah. And then I think one that we didn't take time to say, but you're going to hear this constant thread in a lot of the things we talk about. It takes time. You got to give it time. You're going to do this competitive research, and then you've got to let that settle in your brain and let your subconscious mind work on this problem over time. And you may get some of the groundbreaking ideas right in this initial CSI meeting, or it may take you 6 months of hemming and hawing on this topic before you figure it out. But it's something that you should be working on.
Definitely. And it should be an iterative process. Anyone who follows me knows I'm a huge fan of iteration, as Mike does, bit of Kaizen. You should revisit this. The market will change. The market changes quicker than ever. Literally, we blink, 6 months goes by and the whole market landscape has changed. So what were competitive advantages might not be so strong, or you might hypothesize and kind of predict what's going to help you. And guess what? The market is lukewarm on 4 of the things you picked out, but one of them is huge and everyone goes nuts over it. So double down on that.
Yeah. Very good advice. All right, man. Well, this has been super fun.
Should we call that juice at the end?
I think so. Yeah. It's good. Yeah. Any final thoughts before we jump off?
Can I be honest?
Yes.
In the theme of this show? Yes. And I was reticent to mention it because I feel like that was such a nicely tied up episode and so concise by our standards.
Yeah.
I got a lingering thing in the back of my head, and it would be remiss of me not to mention it because I really want to get your take on it.
All right.
So I think what we've just done is a very kind of business school, but in the real world analysis, and hopefully super helpful for people. I can't help but think of some of the people who are DMing us who are maybe not in such a business setting.
Yeah.
So for the, I don't know, person who's doing watercolor landscapes or something like that, I feel like it's harder to apply some of these models because, you know what I mean? When millions of other people, is the answer there just niching?
I think, I think you can differentiate. So I'll give you an example of this guy in Nigeria, Heavenly Arts. I follow him. He's an unbelievable artist. I'm going to shout him out soon in a post. He's an unbelievable artist and pencil artist, but he does massive scale pencil drawings. So you can look at it and say,
that's product. Though.
Yeah, your product differentiation. So you can look at it and say, okay,
art from Rubik's cubes. Have you seen that?
Yeah, exactly. So you got to look at it and say, okay, if you're an amazing watercolor artist, to just kind of answer to the question of who you're talking about, well, everybody's a watercolor artist. So what is it? Is it the subject matter that you paint that's different? Is it the scale that you paint that's different? Is it the product you put it on that's different? Is it, like you mentioned, the Rubik's Cube thing? Is it, there's got to be something different. And so, this can, we've gone global on this in kind of these global categories, but a lot of those kinds of people probably are going to differentiate in product. They've got to figure out a way to do something that hasn't been done before. I
think so. And, I'm glad we touched on that because I don't want people to feel like, well, that's good for Apple and Amazon or like Mike's big brand agency. But what about little old me who's just trying to make some hand lettering for sale? I think you're spot on with that. So it comes more around product and there's so many examples of that. I talked recently, I wrote an article about hand letterers, how everyone was writing very generic wording. And people like Lauren Hom came on the scene and did stuff that was like, really quirky and funny and sarcastic and sassy and so on. And it broke out. But again, that's product. You're right, whether it's wording or the aesthetics or the medium, the subject matter, that all sits underneath product. And I guess if you're more of an independent, you can pull on that, and you probably should be pulling on that harder than like exemplary customer service and stuff like that. You know, that's not going to be the thing that really helps you break through. Actually, your product is going to be what really breaks through.
Yeah. Yep. I totally agree with that.
Okay. I just had to get that out before we ended.
I think it's really valuable, because you are going to have a lot of small businesses or product designers that are talking about this. Product designers, meaning people who are designing or being artistic in a certain product type that needs,
and it could be anything, right? Someone could be making briefcases or selling trampolines.
My brother, shout out to my brother James in Indiana in the United States, but he makes birdhouses.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, he's the birdhouse magician. If you follow him on Instagram, he goes into the forest and just rummages for junk in the forest, like driftwood and moss and sticks and stuff. And then he comes back to his shop and turns them into these fantasy fairyland birdhouses that he makes. And some of them are just on massive scale, and they're all organic and stylized. So how does he differentiate from the birdhouse that you buy at Home Depot? His is a work of art, and the Home Depot one is generic. So it's differentiating in product for sure.
That's immediately one of the favorite businesses I've ever heard.
Oh yeah.
And you know, and I love that this is perfect point to end, because that comes full circle. Because I think the first thing I said on this episode was, it's so rare that something comes along that makes me think, wow, that's really different and interesting and not generic and boring. That's your brother. That's a wow, that's different moment.
Well, and he's working to try and satisfy some of his things. He's not financially killing it. He works at his company, and he works his job, and he comes home and he needs this creative outlet, but he can't go and afford tons of high scale canvases and all kinds of stuff. So he just goes and uses what's accessible to him. So he's solving his own problems through this channel, and it forced him to be creative and unique.
I feel like he could pivot that, where he takes all of the artistic talent and differentiation, but puts it into something more mainstream. Because I know there's a lot of birds, but I don't personally know anyone, or not many people, that have a birdhouse.
Yeah.
Imagine if he did like the most artistic mailboxes that people had as like a kind of status symbol outside their house.
Yeah. Super fun. Yeah. There you go.
That's a broader market, but the same model.
Tom has an idea for you. That's his broader market. All right, brother. Super fun.
Right. Yeah, I enjoyed that one. I hope everyone listening at home or wherever you are got tremendous value from that. I'm enjoying this. I'll be honest. I like it's like pretty to the point, but like actionable. And I like the wrap up at the end, the little tennis match. So as always, tag us up, #BizBudsPodcast on social media. We want to get back to every single one of you. And Mike, do you want to use that, American charm to convince them to leave a podcast review?
Yes. If you've enjoyed this episode, leave a podcast review on the BizBuds podcast on all of your favorite podcast streaming channels. This is Mike and Tom. We've loved being with you. Thank you for your support. We love to share and we love to banter on these topics, and hope that you're getting some value out of this. Looking forward to seeing you again next week.